everyone, Miss Jean here. Are you ready for another mini adventure in Discovery Mountain? You are? Well, that's great. But first, I have a question for you. Do you take music lessons? Maybe you play the clarinet in the school band, or your sister is teaching you to play the guitar just like she does. Or maybe you take piano lessons. The piano was the first instrument that both my daughters learned how to play. Now, learning to play an instrument takes practice and a skilled and patient teacher. Fortunately, the kids in Discovery Mountain are blessed to have just that. Mrs. Amos is a talented pianist, and she's very, very patient. Hayley is walking up to Mrs. Amos's door right now for her weekly lesson, but she's about to learn more than her usual scales and notes. Let's join them and see how it goes in today's mini adventure called Inheritance.
That must be Hayley. Looks like she's right on time. Just a minute, Hayley. I'm coming. Thanks for being patient. Since I don't see very well, I move a little slower than most people.
No problem, Mrs. Amos. You're always patient when my fingers move slower than they should on the piano.
I guess we're even then. Now, come over here to the piano and let's see how you're doing with that new piece I gave you last week. But first, let's hear your scales.
I just can't seem to get the A major scale you assigned me. It's too hard.
I remember thinking the same thing when I was your age.
Really?
Which part are you surprised at? That I didn't like scales? Or that I was ever your age?
The first one, that you didn't like scales.
Well, it's true. But my Aunt Bessie insisted I do them anyway. She was my first piano teacher.
Bessie? I've never heard that name before, except in a book about some pioneers.
I'm not surprised. It's a very old-fashioned name.
Was your Aunt Bessie as good a teacher as you are?
No, she wasn't. She was even better.
Not possible. You're the best, Mrs. Amos.
Thank you, Hayley. I try to be the kind of teacher my Aunt Bessie was. She loved teaching me to play. In fact, this piano used to be hers. It was part of my inheritance.
Inheritance? What's that?
An inheritance is something special, something passed down from your parents or grandparents.
Or from your Aunt Bessie?
Yes. She never had any children of her own, so she showered all her love on me and made me her heir.
Her heir? Like you mean you had to help her breathe?
Help her breathe? What? Oh, no. I don't mean that kind of heir.
There's more than one kind of heir?
Let me explain. You're thinking of air, A-I-R, the kind you breathe.
Right.
I was talking about a different kind of heir, H-E-I-R.
That's a funny way to spell heir.
The H-E-I-R kind of heir is someone who's given an inheritance.
Like your Aunt Bessie's piano.
Yes. An inheritance can be almost anything. Furniture, money, jewelry, land.
Wow. Being an heir must be pretty special.
It is. And you're an heir, too.
I am?
Yes, of course. Someday I'm sure you'll inherit something special from your parents or grandparents. But even if you don't, you're still an heir.
How? Who else would I inherit anything from?
Since you're a child of God, you're his heir. And he has an awesome inheritance for you.
He does? How do you know?
Because he promised us that he does. You can read it yourself in the Bible, in the book of Jeremiah. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future.
I like that promise.
So do I. And the best part is you don't have to wait to get your inheritance. You can have it right now.
I can? How?
By believing what God says and following him.
I already do. Or at least I try to. I'm still learning from Chaplain Jake.
We're all still learning. Don't you worry. Have you learned about the children of Israel yet?
Yes, a little.
God took them out of Egypt so they wouldn't have to be slaves anymore.
Yes, I remember that story. He opened up the Red Sea so they could escape from Pharaoh's army.
That's right. And then he led them right up to a wonderful country and promised them that it would be theirs. All they had to do was trust that he would really give it to them.
But they didn't believe him?
No, they got scared. They forgot about everything God had already done for them and stopped trusting his promises.
What happened then?
Instead of getting their inheritance, they had to wander around in the desert. After 40 years, God made them the promise again.
And this time they believed God?
That's right. The same God who did that for Israel has big plans for you, too.
He does? How big?
So big you can't even imagine it. Those big plans are part of your inheritance.
That's so exciting.
It doesn't stop there. God has also promised to give you everything you need to make those big plans come true.
Can God help me learn to play my scales?
He can help you develop the determination to keep practicing. How do you think I finally learned them?
You asked God to help you?
I did indeed. God gave me a talent for music as part of my inheritance. And then he gave me the tools to succeed at it. Now, let's start working on your inheritance.
All right.
Mrs. Amos is right. You are a child of God, and that means you are his heir. That's H-E-I-R. Romans 8:17 says, "And since we are his children, we are his heirs." Now, in fact, together with Christ, we are heirs of God's glory. And God has promised you an awesome inheritance. Maybe you dream about being a scientist, teacher, doctor, pastor, or concert pianist. But you're afraid that you're not smart enough or talented enough to make that dream come true. Just remember, if God has given you that dream as part of your inheritance, then he will also help you develop the tools that you need to make it happen. He has an awesome inheritance waiting for you. I'm Miss Jean, and you've been listening to a mini adventure in Discovery Mountain, where the air is clear enough to hear your imagination, and where every day is an exercise in faith. Visit us at discoverymountain.com to send us a message and listen to full episodes on demand. Discovery Mountain is a production of the Voice of Prophecy. Inheritance was written by Janice Nelson.